we talk about software engineering, quality, what is software engineering, what is quality, and then a brief comparison of version 0.8 compared to version 7.6, and then a brief comparison about some of the features that we find in some competing products. The truth of the matter is I wanted to make this much longer, but I was too busy doing work, so I had to cut it short because I ran out of time. Also last year I talked for... Test. Also last year I talked for almost 2 hours in a very technical presentation, where a few people were nodding off at the end of the time, and my mouse was getting fuzzy. So this is a bit more a lighter approach. I've tried to make it light in the sense there's some minor humor in there, and it's also a bit of a philosophical approach, because when we talk about software quality, it's very difficult to determine what is quality and what is quality in software, which is an entity you can't really see or touch. So the fundamental question we have is, what is software? Is it a craft or is it an art? And this is very similar to discussions you can have with mathematicians and people like that. People who, outsiders of the field, will typically say it's a craft. People who are inside the field, in my opinion, will typically say it's an art. There's a mixture of both, of course. Like with a craft, you need to know what you're doing before you can actually become really good at it. It's very similar to software. So, craft or art, what is it? If it's a craft, then there's a formal body of knowledge. Typically, you go to a school or university to acquire that body of knowledge. You don't have to, but that's typically the way to go at it. A craft is usually profit-driven. They're all open source people. We don't make much money of this, or any. Most of us don't. I make a little. But fundamentally, we're not here to make money. We're here because we have an ulterior motive, which in most cases is probably creating a good product and creating something that's useful. A craft, most of the time, especially these days, is proprietary, which means it's a corporate secret and you cannot get to it. It's usually very formalized, most of the time driven by a corporation. It used to be that a craft was also public good, but that's increasingly disappearing. There's standardized methods of execution, there's standardized way of doing it. If you compare this to art, you'll find that some artists certainly studied their field, others were just simply talented people who started doing stuff. And art, in my opinion, is something idealistic, where you have an ulterior motive other than profit to do what you're doing. It can be to create something useful, to create something beautiful, or to simply, do whatever interests you. Art is typically openly shared, very much in the tradition of, say, math or scientific journals or anything else. You can study it, and it's usually meant to be distributed. Now with art that's a physical good, that becomes difficult because you cannot just copy some rock paintings. But with books or so, you can reproduce them a million times and spread them around. Rather than a formalized process, a lot of artists will tell you, well, I just did what worked and what felt good, and in the end, well, something useful came out of it. It's usually driven by an individual, not by a formal corporation. And in my opinion, the difference between craft or art is not what you do, but how you do it. It boils down to the fact excellence of execution. Part of the concept of creating something artistic is the concept of flow. Flow is when the world sort of disappears around you. Time flies without you noticing. It's kind of unpredictable. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. It's a period of intense creativity, and you become one with what you do. And anybody in this room who's ever sat down and said, oh, I just need 5 minutes to fix a bus, and all of a sudden it was 12 hours later, you know what flow is. You may not have solved your bug, but you were deep inside what you were doing. What does it give you? It hopefully at the end of the journey, it gives you a tangible result. All the flow in the world is great, but if you cannot solve your bug, it doesn't really get you anywhere. Typically, you try to create, especially in software, order from chaos. Look at PHP, you'll find chaos. Look at PostNuke 0.7, you'll find a mixture. Look at PostNuke 8, you'll find order. We're definitely moving in the right direction here, in my opinion. Hopefully, order from chaos results in quality and uniformity. Leonardo da Vinci said, perfectionism, there's nothing left